Once again, it's on. You know what time it is. It's time to play some toss. Welcome, everyone, to episode 48 of the Tristan on Sports Show Toss. It is your main man, T-Squared, Tristan Thomas, here with some more fresh heat straight from the kitchen. And when I say it's heat, y'all, this week, it's heat. Normally, we'd be getting back into the swing of things with the state of the state. We'd be getting back to talking Packers football, with it coming back this Sunday, the season finally starting in the NFL. We'd be talking about the Brewers, for as up and down as they've been. Somehow, some way, they're still in the playoff chase. But no, we can't talk about any of that tonight or today. As we record it, it's night. You'll probably hear this in the daytime. Whenever you're listening to it, we can't talk about any of that. Why can't we talk about any of that? Because the Bucks. The Bucks. The Bucks decided to go and do something they know full well they shouldn't have done. They were the favorites. They were the number one seed, the best record in the entire association. And what did they do? They got themselves into an 0-3 hole versus the Miami Heat. They found a way to scratch and claw after losing Giannis to get a game, although it took them until overtime, in Game 4 to avoid the sweep, to force a Game 5. But did they win, folks? They did not. The Milwaukee Bucks have been eliminated from the NBA playoffs. And this, folks, is the Bucks season wrap. Firstly, we have to give all the credit in the world to Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic, the entire Miami Heat squad. They are playing the best basketball in the association right now. They are going to be, and have proven to be, the toughest out in the entire association right now. The Miami Heat are not a team you want to play right now. And again, I can't give Eric Spoelstra enough credit. This is a guy who guided the Miami Heat to 4 straight NBA finals. He guided them to 2 title wins. People will look at that and say, oh, well, he had LeBron and Wade and Bosh. But what they fail to realize is that even before Bosh, even before LeBron came down to Miami, he had those guys balling. He knows how to coach up a defense. He knows how to coach up a team and get the absolute best out of them. Eric Spoelstra has gotten results before LeBron and Bosh and Wade. He's gotten results with those guys, and he's gotten results after those guys, and they're returning to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since they had that trio of guys that went on to 4 straight NBA Finals I mentioned before. So all the credit in the world to those guys because they played their asses off. They are the toughest out in the association right now. They are playing the best basketball in the association. And I don't care who comes out of that Toronto-Boston series on the other side of the Eastern Conference semis. If Spoelstra keeps coaching these guys up this way, and those guys continue to go out there and execute and make big shots the way they had against the Bucks, they're going to be the representatives of the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. And quite honestly, doesn't matter who comes out of the West. If they're playing like that, they could beat anybody. They're so sound defensively. They make big shots. They are a tough team to guard. They're a tough team to handle, and they're a tough team to score upon. So all the credit in the world to the Miami Heat. You could talk all the trash. You can, to to the victor go the spoils, right? You could talk all their trash. You could walk around with your chest puffed out. Hey, you're headed to the Eastern Conference Finals. You're one step away from the NBA Finals. You beat the best team in the association, at least the best team, the team with the best record, because they damn sure haven't played like the best team in the association. But we're going to get to that in a minute. We're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. So all the credit in the world to the Miami Heat. Just the way they played was just stellar, just stellar. But we got to get to the Milwaukee Bucks because, after all, this is the Bucks season wrap. How did we get here? How exactly did Milwaukee go from being the title favorites and getting the best record to being bounced in the second round? They had a great start to the season. You talk about in preseason, they're blowing teams out. Giannis is barely playing double-digit minutes. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but, But they're blowing teams out. They're dominant. It seemed like the same dominance from last season transferred over to this season. Couple new faces, but the same spaces. Hitting threes. Giannis unstoppable in the paint. The reigning MVP. He will more than likely win MVP again in a few days here. It is a regular season award, so it will be well-deserved, but then it's going to start that chatter of, well, wait, maybe we should wait for the playoffs to be over and vote MVP then, and it's going to be just as stupid. But I digress. They were blowing teams out. They were crushing teams. Giannis not having to play a lot of minutes. Middleton not having to play a lot of minutes. Talking about Giannis doing MVP things. I mean, for the season, he averaged nearly 30 points a game, over 13 rebounds, over 5 assists. Chris Middleton, over 20 points per game. Shot over 40% from three. Narrowly missing out on a 50-40-90 season. Shooting 50% from the field, 40% from three, 90% from the line. Narrowly missed out on that. You got role players like Wesley Matthews and Kyle Korver, Dante DiVincenzo, Pat Connaughton, not having to exert themselves and do anything outside of their game. They, too, not playing too many minutes. The Bucks got out to a 52-8 start through the first 60 games. They were 52-8. All the talk was about, will this team win 70? This team could possibly win 70. It's 70 watch. I never believed that they would get to 70. Let's just make that clear. Things were at its dominant usual. Then, Giannis gets a little bit banged up, misses a few games. But even before he missed a few games, Bucks started to slip defensively. They started to let a few things go. They didn't exactly look the same on that end of the court. For what reason? I could not put my finger on it at that point in time. And then in March, you have the NBA shutdown due to COVID-19. Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell being the first two in the NBA with this disease, with this virus. And luckily they have recovered. And I'm using air quotes on recovered because we all know that our long-term effects with this, but that's a different story for a different day. So the NBA shuts down. And for 4 months, there's no NBA basketball. We didn't even know if this season would continue. But one thing was for sure. The Bucks were not the Bucks. They did not look the same. Something was off. They ended up on the 3-game losing streak before the NBA eventually put a plan together, did all the proper testing, had a proper site, had a proper bubble formed and all of its ins and outs and intricacies that of how they wanted to work it, and decided to restart the season. So they have a 3-game losing streak. And you would think, okay, they've essentially had an off season's worth of time off. They should come back fresh and just as dominant as we know them to be. Except they didn't come back as fresh and as dominant as we knew them to be, because they continued to struggle, especially defensively. They went in the seeding round of games. They went 3-5 in the bubble. They ended up 56-17 for the year. But 3-5 in the bubble for the team with the best record in the association, a team with title aspirations, a team that were title favorites. And now you're struggling defensively. And it's noticeable to everyone. This was a rough patch. And honestly, it's a little bit more than a rough patch. I can't even begin to describe to you what this is. It's almost as if the Monstars took their ability defensively. And quite possibly, when you talk about their playoff run, and we'll get to that in a second, they took their ability offensively. But 3-5 in the bubble. You won just enough games to clinch the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Not that completely mattered, because you now no longer have home court because of COVID. COVID had different plans, and now you're in the bubble. So home court means nothing. Everyone's on a road trip, except if you're Orlando, who was their first opponent. First round, first opponent, 1 versus 8. You're thinking to yourself, all right, if you go back to last year, it was first round versus Detroit. That was a flat-out sweep, just absolute dominance. This should be the same thing. To which I say, hold on, player. It ain't exactly the same thing. Especially not when you are playing this way, this inconsistently on defense. They got a big man in Vucevic that can shoot, that can bang on the inside. They've got guys who can hit shots from the outside. Did I think Orlando could win that series? No, but I believe they could make it tough. And they did. But a lot of that, and let's even back it up, they won the first game of that series, to everyone's shock. So did the Lakers on the other side. They were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, and they lost their first playoff game 2 versus the 8 seed. Except that 8 seed was Portland, so that was a different story. But still, they still lost 2. So both number 1 seeds lost for the first time in a long time. But I digress. They had the tools to make this tough because of their ability to defend. Steve Clifford teams are always going to be able to defend. And that's what they did. They defended pretty well. But somehow, some way, on sheer talent alone, the Bucks were able to overcome that and hand them a gentleman's sweep. They lost the first game, won the next 4. You're on to the next round. You're on to the next round, but those problems defensively and somewhat offensively continue to persist. You're inconsistent defensively. You're inconsistent with your shooting. Brook Lopez wasn't making a tremendous amount of threes. Chris Middleton was inconsistent. Pat Connaughton was inconsistent. Dante DiVincenzo was inconsistent. Giannis was the only constant in that series. He was dominant on the inside. They had nobody they were not going to be able to collapse in the paint and make life tough for Giannis the way another team would. the way another team like Miami could and did. So you're on to the second round. You're up against Miami. This was the nightmare matchup I saw coming in the regular season. When Miami made that big comeback and hit all those threes in their first matchup, and I believe it was the second game of the regular season, you're talking way back in October at Pfizer Forum, and they made this big comeback, 20-plus points, and they hit 20-plus threes. I think it was a franchise record for most threes hit by them. And they beat the Bucks. The way they defended and the way they were able to make outside shots and the way Mike Budenholzer has his defense collapse in the paint to protect the rim at all costs and give up so many open threes, and they have so many guys that can make those threes. Jay Crowder, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler. Those guys can make those threes if they're open. Goran Dragic. They have guys who could go out there and make those shots. And they take them at a high enough volume to where they're going to make you pay for collapsing in the paint and trying to protect the rim at all costs. They beat them in that second game in Miami in the regular season. Third game happened in the bubble. Jimmy Butler didn't play that game, but the Heat found themselves up by 23. The Bucks had to climb out of a 23-point hole without a Jimmy Butler on the Heat to make a comeback in that game that was at that point meaningless. Bucks had already wrapped up the number 1 seed. They had nothing really to play for. This was more so to get back into basketball shape and get tuned up for the playoffs. But through those 3 games in which the Heat went 2-1 in the regular season, I said it. This is the matchup they don't want to see in the second round. This is the matchup they don't want to see at all if they're going to continue to play like this. And they did. They got outcoached, outplayed. They learned nothing, absolutely nothing, from last year's Eastern Conference Finals loss in 6 games to the eventual world champion Toronto Raptors. They learned nothing. You talk about another team that is tough defensively and had guys that can make threes. Fred VanVleet went nuclear. Had his child, and he just found another gear. He went nuclear from 3. Could not miss. Could not miss. You could have the basket on the other side of the world. He's pulling, and he's going to make it. They learned nothing from that because a lot of the same philosophies were used in this round by the Miami Heat. They were going to make life tough for Giannis. They were going to make him feel them. Collapse in the paint. He's going to see 2 to 3 defenders at all times in front of him. He's not going to have those easy lanes. And it's going to be up to the other guys, the shooters that they brought in. Wesley Matthews, Kyle Korver, who's one of the great shooters in NBA history. George Hill, who led the NBA in three-point shooting this regular season at 48%. Excuse me, I think it was 46%. It's going to be up to those guys to be able to make those open shots, which is something they did not do in the Eastern Conference Finals last season against Toronto. What was going to be learned from that series? And when you watch this series unfold, and as Miami took a 3-0 lead, they learned nothing. Guys were missing wide open shots. Giannis wasn't as aggressive trying to get inside. He became more of a facilitator. And I think he did that to try to open up his game so he could maybe get some easy cuts to the basket. And, in small spurts, it worked. But then again, it wasn't really much of an impact. Nothing these guys did was much of an impact through the first 3 games. That 4th game came, and this was the most aggressive I'd seen Giannis in this series. Could you imagine, had he not rolled that ankle again for the 2nd time in 3 days, how many points he would have put up? He put up 19 points in just over 11 minutes in game 4. I think he finally got it. It finally clicked for him. Hey, I'm the most aggressive paint scorer, the best paint scorer since Shaquille O'Neal. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm faster, I'm longer. I can beat this defense. I can be more physical than this defense. I can get these points on the inside and open it up for my guys so we could get these wins and try to make a historic comeback. It's the most aggressive I'd seen him. And it's gone in an instant. Rolls his ankle. He's out for game 4 or the rest of game 4. Chris Middleton, with his best performance of the playoffs, 36, 8, and 8, hit multiple threes. He was 12 for 28 from the field, but he had to take all those shots to keep these guys in it. Cooked the Heat for 21 points in the 3rd quarter. Was shut down in the 4th. But somehow, some way, the Bucks found their way back to pull it even, going to overtime, to where Middleton woke up again, put up 9 points, outscored the Heat by himself in that overtime period. I believe it was 9-8. Gave themselves a shot. I don't think there was anybody in the world that thought that Giannis was going to be able to play game 5. And that was the case. He was not able to play. He came into the building in a walking boot, a noticeable limp. Really didn't look like he was trying to put too much weight on it at all. So you knew he wasn't going to be able to play. So the hopes were, let's get it to a game 6 and see. And when you got to game 6, you okay, let's get it to game 7, and hopefully Giannis is available. But you didn't even get to game 6. You lost in 5. You had a lead, and in the 3rd quarter, you decided to not score for over 6.5 minutes. And the game was within 1. Make no mistake when I say this to you. This is a colossal failure by the Milwaukee Bucks. There's no other way to put it. And you know how we do it here on Toss. Truthful, opinionated, passionate. This was a gigantic failure by the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, some people will have you believing that it was such a failure that Giannis is going to leave. Which brings me into my next question. What next? So let's get this out of the way for the dum-dums that won't let it sink into their skulls. Giannis is not a free agent this offseason. He's a free agent next offseason. The Bucks are able to offer him a max contract, a super max contract worth north of $250 million. He ain't going anywhere, at least not after this season. So let that sink in. He's not going to Miami. He's not going to the Warriors. He's not going to Dallas. He's not going to all these other places that you want to put up in these stupid rumor mill type articles or whatever. So NBA Twitter, chill out. Folks at the Ringer, chill out. He's not a free agent, so there's no use in you all talking about it right now. But after this colossal failure, where is his mind? You're going home. You're out of the bubble. We don't even know how next season's going to look. There's no way you're going to be able to play 82 regular season games in this type of bubble environment. Something's going to have to change. So we don't even know how next season's going to look and when it will happen. So a lot can happen between now and when those decisions and plans are made. But as it stands right now, Giannis has a year left on his contract. He could very well say, I'm going to honor this year. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to play hard. I'm going to compete for a championship. And we'll see after that. Maybe he does the LeBron and KD thing where he signs a 1-and-1 just to see if they're going to put a bit better of a team around him that's actually going to perform in the playoffs. Because let's be honest, that's been the problem. This has been a great regular season team. The things that Budenholzer does work well in the regular season because you're not always facing the best of the best in the regular season. But when those screws tighten, as they normally do, come playoff time, well, you're going to have to do something different. And Budenholzer did not do that. At times, he made minor adjustments, minor tweaks. But for the most part, he did exactly what he did in the Toronto series and got the same exact results, getting bounced from the playoffs earlier than you expected. And this time, it was even earlier than last season. What are you going to do at point guard? I remember when everybody jumped on Eric Bledsoe after not showing up in previous playoff series. And I'm like, okay, just, lay off of him for a little bit. Let's just see if this is a habitual thing. And then we could come back to it once we have all the proof. Well, now we have the proof. Yes, he's been all defensive team NBA. Yes, he's been second team all defense in the NBA. But when the screws tighten and the lights heighten, he is nowhere to be found offensively. He's dogging guys defensively. That has not been a problem. But offensively, Bucks are on a run, and he's pulling up for just the most atrocious three-point baskets and misses them. That's not your forte. He can get to the cup, but for some reason, can't finish when we're in the playoffs. So what do you do to upgrade at that position? Because it's becoming glaringly obvious that maybe there is a change needed in that position. Is that something John Horst addressed? Do you need another playmaker? Do you need a guy who could go and get his own shot, break down the defense, kick it out, and have somebody make that shot? Bledsoe could break down defenses, but he has the most mind-boggling, mind-puzzling turnovers. Why are you jump passing? I've seen so many jump pass turnovers from him in this series. It made me grow more gray hairs than I already have. He could break down a defense, but he just turns the ball over. He could break down a defense and get to the cup, but he can't finish. And these are just playoff things. He does a far better job in the regular season, but when it's playoff time, for some reason, all that goes away. And now we have habitual evidence, tangible evidence of this being a habitual habit. So what do you do there? Do you need better role players? Is this all mental? Kyle Korver was brought onto this team to be that shooter, to make those shots that they did not make in the Toronto series last year in Eastern Conference Finals. And he did not do that. He absolutely did not do that. Dante DiVincenzo, who had a pretty decent season. nowhere to be found in the playoffs. Yes, he had a decent game in Game 5. They still got bounced. But he's nowhere to be found. Pat Connaughton, another guy who's supposed to be one of those wide open shooters and make those shots. He was nowhere to be found. Marvin Williams was another guy who was supposed to be able to hit those shots from the outside. He barely took any. He constantly tried to get it inside. And he really didn't have that much success. Brook Lopez was up and down. He had some great games. But in that Miami series, he was relatively quiet. Budenholzer's rotations still puzzle me. Ersan not in there. The rebounding, the defense that he gives, the three-point shooting ability he gives, stretchability he gives, didn't take advantage of any of it. They learned nothing from that Toronto series, and they got the same exact results as they did last season and got bounced earlier. John Horst has work to do, and it starts with making sure you secure Giannis for the foreseeable future. Whether that's the Supermax deal, whether it's a 1-and-1, I don't know. But you need to get that commitment from him. But you also need to commit to yourself, to ownership, that you're going to make this team better. You're going to get the necessary pieces to help this team get over the hump. And you need to make it clear to Mike Budenholzer that you can't have this happening again. This is now 2 years straight where you've been great in the regular season, and when it comes to tough postseason series, you've made absolutely no adjustments. You'll absolutely learn nothing from past situations in which this has happened. This can't happen again. After this elimination, you're left with the feeling of, did the Bucks championship window close? And I don't know if I want to go too far as to say that their championship window closed. But I'm not going to say that it wasn't, it isn't like, it's not wide open. I'll say that much. It's not wide open as it was maybe last season. I think that was a golden opportunity for them to win an NBA championship. And it let it slip through their fingers. In the bubble, strange things have happened in the bubble. We all know this. This was another golden opportunity for them to win an NBA championship. Yes, it would have been tough. But they could have gotten it done. Next year, whenever that happens, or next season, I should say, whenever that happens, you got a healthy Kyrie and KD up in Brooklyn. They're going to make things tough. Toronto, I believe, is still going to be a tough squad. Nick Nurse is a hell of a coach. I mean, it's not going to be easy. The Warriors will be back. Those guys will be healthy, ready to go. They've got the second overall pick in the NBA draft. Going to add another talent to all the talent they already have. Well-coached team, Steve Kerr out there. It's only going to get more difficult for you to win an NBA championship. So what are you going to do? Mike Budenholzer, Giannis, the rest of the guys on the team, John Horst, ownership. The salary cap is going to be down due to COVID. What moves can you make? What talent can you acquire that helps the Milwaukee Bucks get over the hump? Well, that's going to be a question that is going to have to be stewed upon for months and months and months, because we don't know when the season is going to start. We really don't. And that's the tough thing. There's so many questions. with absolutely no answers right now. And we don't know if there'll ever be any answers for them. Maybe the Bucks stay pat. And maybe they continue to suffer the same fate. And if that is the case, does Giannis jump ship and go elsewhere? All that is on the table because of this colossal failure in what is the 2020 NBA playoffs. Bucks are out. And we'll have to wait indefinitely to see if they can rectify this great failure. Well, that's all for me this week. It's been episode 48 of the Trishan on Sports Show Toss. Check out TossNationMedia.com, your home for the Toss brand of sports. We're also on Facebook, Facebook.com/Tion Sports Show. That's TON Sports Show. And you can also follow me on Twitter at the20double. That's at the number 2, number 0, and the word double. I'm also on Instagram at the same handle, so I make it easy for you to follow all the shenanigans on TossNationMedia.com. But as I said before, it's time for me to get on up out of here. This is T-Squared Tristan Thomas, reminding you to keep it moving forward. Always forward. Forward always. Until next week, so long from Toss.